90% of retrieval is based on cosine similarity out there. And we know that cosine similarity might not be the best ranking metric for some tailor from specific for some very specific problems.
What kinds of metrics do you see as being the most important things to pay attention to?
That that should be a measure, an end-to-end measure, the end-to-end quality metric, preferably in a Likert scale. One of the good things about RAG is nothing but an evolution of search. I'll put it this way. You can build solutions that where you claim to replace a human, but that sells initially, but with that, there are lots of challenges um, where the AI could hallucinate and that could break the trust uh, between yourself and between the product and the user.
Hey friends, and welcome to the very first episode of the DevBot Tea. My name's Ben Link, and I'll be your host. You can find all of our social information and connections to all the speakers and everything in the description below. Please make sure you drop a like and a subscribe so that we know you're interested in the content and you won't miss any updates coming from us. So what exactly is the purpose of the DevBot Tea? Well, at Torvalds, we're building an AI-powered support buddy, a chat system that can live within your interaction channels and gather those questions, whether they're from internal staff or from customers or customer prospects. But use your data and your docs and your information to answer whatever questions they have about your product. Now, we're not cutting the human out of the loop. We're keeping you involved because we give you a support dashboard where you can see the questions come in, you can see the proposed answers, and you can select whether to use that answer or tweak it or regenerate it, but you get to stay in control of it. So that's the plan for the company. The DevBot T is about basically anything that could be adjacent to that. So we want to talk about AI. We want to talk about interesting uses for language models and for other machine learning algorithms and modeling and platforms and whatever else might connect, integration potentials, all of those things. If it's adjacent to the AI community, we're probably going to try to talk about it here. Our goal for the show then is to bring in lots of people from different areas of AI. Because as you've seen, it's a wide-reaching field. There's lots of different things going on, and it's impossible to keep up with it all. But if we can bring a few people to the table to tell us what's going on in their world, we'll start to learn a little bit about all these different areas. So our first guest is Raghavan. He's a senior engineering manager at LinkedIn, where he works on the AI search team. Apart from his day job there, he's also really active in the open source community, leading multiple work streams of GenAI Commons, part of the Linux Foundation. He's also an active hackathon participant on LabLab.ai, where he's won a few hackathons, including his most recent win, where he built Codebase Buddy, which we'll talk about a little bit in our interview today. It's a semantic code search application using Olama. Let's see if we can dive in with Raghavan and get to know him a little bit. So, Raghavan, it's great to meet you. I'm glad you were able to be on the show with us today.
I'm happy to be here.
I would like to start with just maybe a little bit about some of your history here. I see, for instance, that you worked on Codebase Buddy. And I'm kind of interested to see where that goes as a hobbyist sort of developer myself. That seems like something that I might be interested in hearing more about. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, given the field of AI is fast changing, it's a full-time job to keep yourself updated. So I do spend substantial cycles of my bandwidth on open source and lablab.a. Lablab.a is this hackathon site where
Hmm.
people build applications on for there are several hackathons that are happening every other week. So one such hackathon was using Open Interpreter to build applications on top of Open Interpreter. And I found there are a lot of code completion applications. Like if you type a code and then if with some special characters that with some special keys, it will complete the code for you. There was not a clear code search application that is semantic in nature, where you can ask questions about your repository, and then that application would give an answer of where you think of this. Let's say you are a new contributor to a code base, or you just joined a new team, and you don't know, and you were given a simple task. You don't know heads or tails of where to start. And almost always you will reach out to the senior engineer in the team, or your buddy or your mentor,
Yeah.
uh, to say, hey, I have been given this task of adding a green button in this page. I don't know where to start. And they are going to say, hey, these are the files that you need to touch, and these are the changes that you need to make. And then you would make those changes. That process can be automated with retrieval augmented generation, right? So with retrieval augmented generation, um, you can build an index out of a GitHub repo where you index every single file semantically. And then when someone asks a question, you can answer that question based on what you have in your retrieval source. So that's the problem I was trying to solve. And then I implemented that code base buddy maybe a year ago.
Okay, so instead of it being something that sort of does the work for me, it's something that's teaching me how to do the work. That
That is correct. Yes.
That's fantastic. I personally think that's probably a more exciting use of AI, just because I like to learn things, but I don't always have the resources around me, the people around me to ask the questions of. And so that really is exciting to think about. Hey, it could teach me how to interact with this code base.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also not trying to oversell this. This is like almost all the 101 applications that you see on the internet for LangChain or Llama Index would be
Mhm.
talk to your PDF, which is you have a set of PDFs, ask questions on top of the PDF. I
Yeah,
simply changed it from PDF to your code base or local repository so that it would be useful for developers.
that's
So
fantastic.
yeah,
Okay. And I've understood that that's one of the things that inspired us here at Torvalds to look at how we would do the interaction with people. And that's one of the things that attracted me to work with Torvalds is to be able to do something with AI that's about helping somebody rather than just replacing them.
that is correct. Uh, yeah, I'll put it this way. You can build solutions that where you claim to replace a human, but that sells initially, but with that there are lots of challenges
Mhm.
um, where the AI could hallucinate, and that could break the trust uh, between yourself and between the product and the user. And I do see a need for human in the loop.
Mhm.
And so AI aiding you would be a much better application because it would improve your productivity versus AI replacing you. So, and that's what I thought behind. That's the thought behind developing Codebase Buddy, where AI acts as your buddy, where you can ask it questions and it would answer for you, as opposed to AI completing that job for you.
Definitely, and probably easier to sell to a developer too. And like, here's this thing that'll replace you versus here's this thing that can help you get your work done.
Exactly. Yes.
That's cool. So how do you envision the future of like cross-field research applications using RAG? Do you see any, challenges in the scaling to get into more diverse fields?
When you say cross fields, you are talking about applying retrieval augmented generation to some underserved market, right? Or some completely different field.
Hmm.
So I think the problems that exist today with retrieval augmented generation would be applicable for that also. For example, uh, the quality of retrieval augmented generation depends on the retrieval source. If you look at any vanilla implementation of retrieval augmented generation on the internet, it would be you take the corpus, break it into chunks, and then apply an embedding model for each of those chunks, and then
Mhm.
store it into a vector store, most likely Pinecone or there are a lot in the market. Pinecone is the one that comes to my mind. There is
Yeah.
VV, it's ChromaDB. And then after that, when user issues a query, you convert that into an embedding using the same embedding model, and then do a vector search, most likely a nearest neighbor search based on cosine similarity. And then you get the top K uh, chunks from that vector source and then send it to a large language model to generate the final passage. If you see here, the parameters are the embedding model that we use is fixed. And then the another parameter is the top K documents that you retrieve from the vector store. And then obviously the large language model that you use for the prompt and the large language model that you use for generation. In this, a very common and most overseen, like people tend to overlook this thing is that the relevance of that retrieval source. We are relying on the cosine similarity of the cosine similarity between the query and the top K retrieved documents chunks. If what you are looking for, the answer that you are looking for, if it's not present in the top K that you are retrieving from the vector source,
Hmm.
uh, your large language model is not going to do a good job. For example, let's say you are, let's take a very, let's take a, I'm just making this up. Let's say we are building a RAG for uh, movies, or
Okay.
say RAG for, say, a specific section of uh, legal code, say SEC, or just say SEC filings, and you are asking a question of asking a question for which the top K retrieved document does not have an answer for that question, then no matter what, the large language model is not going to be able to answer that question. It's
Yeah.
going to generate an incorrect answer. So the bottom line that I'm trying to say is for any retrieval augmented generation problem, be it an application of it in a traditional field or some completely new field, the quality of retrieval source matters a lot. If the retrieval source is poor, then no matter how good of an LLM you have, you are not going to generate a quality answer. Second problem that I see is um, second problem that I see is just like the ranked. I said the first problem is the quality of the retrieval source. The second problem that I see is it's related to the same thing but more nuanced, where almost always, if I have to put a number, I would say 90%. 90% of retrieval is based on cosine similarity out there, and we know that cosine similarity might not be the best ranking metric for some tailor from specific for some very specific problems. So
Sure.
we may have to reinvent, or sorry, I should not say reinvent. We may have to rethink how we do retrieval and ranking of the documents that are retrieved from these retrieval sources, so that our RAG solution uh, meets the bar for that particular field. So TLDR, the bottom line is the quality of results retrieved from retrieval source matters. And there are two challenges. One is the retrieval of that document itself, and second, ranking of the document.
It's amazing to me that regardless of how advanced our technology gets, we're still sort of limited by the old garbage in, garbage out.
Yes, and I also want to point out that these are not new problems. These are age-old information retrieval search engine problems. Given a query, do we have the right 10 blue links on top? It's the Google problem. So yeah, your garbage in, garbage out analogy matches perfectly for the second part, which is the generation part. If we give the LLM a garbage prompt, we are going to get a garbage out. uh, the slight difference in my comment is the problems that I were talking about, which is the retrieval and ranking, or age-old, well-known information retrieval problems that we are working for since the internet era of late 1990s. Uh, like with the advent of Google and Bing, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess as you consider the accuracy of your query and response, um, it becomes important to know exactly what kinds of metrics people would use to measure the effectiveness of an AI initiative.
Yeah.
Um, what kinds of metrics do you see as being the most important things to pay attention to? And those could be like technical things, or they could even be like people things in terms of how we organize like our approach as a company to adopting AI tooling.
Okay, so that and we are talking strictly in terms of RAG, right?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I would say that that should be a measure, an end-to-end measure, the end-to-end quality metric, preferably in a Likert scale. One of the good things about RAG is nothing but an evolution of search within the LLM world.
Yeah.
And as a result, whatever that we were doing for search engines in the late 90s and the early 2000s and 2010s and late to the are still applicable. So Google and Bing employ an army of annotators, or I think they call them raters, where their their main task is given a query and a list of 10 blue links, they are supposed to rate each URL on a scale of this may vary depending on the team and the task, on a scale of 6, something like detrimental, bad. For this query, for this URL, this result is detrimental or bad or fair or good, excellent, perfect. So so inspiring from that, getting an inspiration from like based on that, we could develop an end-to-end guideline that evaluates the response quality of your application, of your RAG application, on a Likert scale of say preferably 4 or 5, depending on your use case. That will set the basis for how you are evaluating your system end to end, and developing guidelines should be your number one task or number one project when number one thing to tackle when you're taking on a RAG project. And once you do that, then you can have very granular metrics of how your retrieval is performing and how your uh, generation is performing, the quality of your generation, the quality of your retrieval. So in summary, oh sorry, we're about to say
Oh, I was
something.
just thinking, would that be something that you would actually build into the application, or is this something that sits external and collects
Sits external,
analytics?
sits external and collects.
Okay.
So I would prepare a query set. Uh, let's say we'll go back to Codebase buddy. And then I would prepare a query set of these are the kind of queries that an engineer would ask for this
Mhm.
particular repository, a giant repository. And then I would prepare guidelines to evaluate responses. And once I prepare guidelines to evaluate these responses, then I can have to start with, I can have human annotators to evaluate the response to establish a baseline. And then I can actually eventually employ an LLM to do this job, where another LLM is evaluating the performance of this RAG to say whether on a scale of 0 to 5, where do we stand? And LLM can read the guideline. Let's say that's a standalone separate LLM. Let's call it the evaluator LLM.
Mhm.
And the sole job of that LLM is to take in the question or query and get the response from our RAG system. It has the entire guidelines of how to evaluate this on a scale of 1 to 4, or say 0 to 5, depending on the use case. And then that LLM is going to evaluate our RAG on a regular basis, and that's how I would um, measure progress.
Okay. I've read a little bit about that, and one question that I still have that I haven't found an answer to is, are we talking about a completely separate model, or are we just talking about a different instance of the same model? When you say like the evaluator LLM, or does it even matter? I
I don't think it matters,
okay.
as long as what matters is that evaluator LLM's context length should fit the entire guideline.
Okay. So as
Because
long as you reset the context and you
yeah,
have
yeah,
the space to evaluate, then
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. Okay.
yeah. I have heard Google's rater guidelines is like several pages long. So so the context length of that LLM matters. So as long as you can fit your guideline and then the question and then the response from your application, then it can be a different LLM or the instance of the same LLM.
Okay. Yeah, I'd wondered how much trust we were putting in an individual model versus does it make sense to maybe spread the wealth and say, well, I might pull in Mistral over here, I might use Llama
Oh,
over there, I might get, ChatGPT, whatever flavor over
oh,
here.
I think you have to employ humans at the beginning to
Right.
get ground truth, and then you have to tweak the prompt of that evaluator LLM so that there is high, inter high agreement between the LLM and the human annotation
Okay, so it's about the agreement between me and the model
LLMs.
rather
So
than
you, yeah,
model one and model two.
yeah. So we have our RAG application. I am not talking about the LLM that is powering that RAG application. We are using another LLM to evaluate this RAG application.
Got it. Okay.
And one of the tasks that we have to do upfront is to develop a prompt so that we are able to, so that this evaluator LLM produces more or less the same labels as a human would do.
All right.
So if you can benchmark the agreement rate between a human and the LLM for that particular evaluation task, and say you are tolerant for a 5% error or a 10% error, which means say the LLM is going to give more or less the same labels or scores like a human would do, then this LLM would actually scale your evaluation cycles.
All right. Back on the topic of metrics, do you think there are any that become misleading or that we should avoid?
Since this is a quality, so end of the day, for RAG applications, it's all about quality. If the quality of responses is good, people are going to come back and use your uh, application again and again.
For sure.
So anything that is not quality, and say if prematurely optimized for say growth, that might be misleading in my opinion. So we should definitely measure adoption. We should measure uh, whether people are coming back and using our RAG application on a day-to-day basis or a week. Whether the stickiness, we should measure those stickiness. All of that
Yeah.
is important. But blind growth metric should not be the goal. Rather, I would say quality is more important, because if quality is uh, top-notch, people are going to come back and use your application.
I really like that. I see a whole lot of these things that seem to be built with the idea of growth in mind. And it's like, well, just get more people to use it, bring in more people, get more people excited about it. And then, well, if it's terrible, it
Yeah.
really didn't
You can
accomplish
always
anything.
increase your top of funnel when you have a very good quality at the bottom of the funnel. So yeah, I would, anything that is purely growth oriented without having quality. Uh, Quality is the single most important metric. Anything else, I think, will eventually be in our roadmap once we nail quality.
Sounds good.
Oh, I would say maybe we should have a separate set of metrics to establish trust, uh,
That's
to
a good
ensure
point.
that trust and trust and safety is measured. Like, see what happens. I'm not sure if we are over time, but I'll give an example. How are we measuring this quality? We are measuring this quality based on pre-computed set of queries. We have created a query set and we are measuring them, but we are not stress testing our system adversarially, like red teaming the RAG solution. So
Mhm.
maybe red, we should establish. We should red. I'm not sure if there are metrics specific to uh, that, but say hallucination rate, all trust related metrics, we should capture, we should measure them and capture that.
How
Uh,
would you say those are different from quality? Because it seems to me that they're almost conflatable, where
It's
a poor
conflatable.
quality message would be the same thing as something I don't
It,
trust.
it, it, it is possible to bake that into quality. I
Okay.
agree. So it's possible to develop a guideline so that if something is breaking trust, give the lowest possible score. If something is a hallucination, definitely give the lowest possible score. However, the reason I would say that we should still measure them separately is we should be able to say why our quality score is below 2, or sorry, below 3, or below 4, or is not in the acceptable range for so and so reason.
Okay.
And if it's hallucination, then we should know what percentage of our responses are hallucination, or hallucinated responses, or what percentage of responses are politically incorrect, or falls under this gray area of this is not what we represent, or what we as that product owner represent. So that's why I, 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 I am with you when you say that can be baked into quality. But once we know that we are not meeting quality for so and so reason, we should be able to say this percentage of our queries, or this percentage of our traffic is where we hallucinate a lot.
All right. Let's see. So a little bit of an off the wall question, and I didn't prep you for this, but I'm kind of curious just based on the discussion. What kind of things are you hacking on now? I know we can't talk about work, but like outside of work, what kind
I
of things are you building right now?
Even the code base buddy, I recently rebuilt it using locally built LLMs. That is, sorry, locally deployed LLMs. So,
Okay.
okay, privacy is going to be an important thing. Would you agree?
Yes,
Is
definitely.
privacy is I should not say privacy is going to be an important. Privacy is an important thing. So when I built Codebase Buddy last year, it was using GPT endpoints.
Hmm.
But with the advent of Olama, I was able to deploy cholesterol model onto my laptop. So I don't have to hit the GPT endpoints to do the generation part. I can build the retrieval augmented generation part all within my laptop without hitting any external. So I could simply pull the plug on my internet and this will work on my laptop
Yeah.
for a local repo. So I am trying to ensure that the rack solutions are deployable fully on my laptop. So I don't have to ever hit an external endpoint. So and 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 locally deployable LLMs are much smaller in scale. They are not 1 trillion parameters. They are probably say few billion parameters, if you will.
Yeah.
And that that in itself is a challenge. Models with lesser number of parameters are not as capable as some higher end models like GPT-4 or GPT-4o. But it is possible to fine tune them so that they are good for your task, and they are small enough so that I can deploy on my edge machine, on my laptop, and be able to build RAG applications on top of
It's
it.
amazing that just in a couple of years, we went from these massive models down to things that'll run on commodity hardware.
Yes, for a niche task, if the task is specific.
Yeah. I've done a little experimenting with Olama myself, and I've been really impressed with the results that I can get from it. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I did not get. I said I do a lot of lab.ai hacking, right? When I built Codebase Buddy, I was only a finalist, but for this Codestral Codebase Buddy, I got a gold medal. So people take privacy seriously.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story. I'm gonna have to go dig up Codebase Buddy. I want to see more about that. It looks like it would be something that's right up my alley for some of the things I've been experimenting with personally.
Yeah.
So last question, kind of closing up here. If I'm in an organization who hasn't experimented with AI yet, um, one of the things I noticed in my own personal journey is it's hard to figure out where to get started. So where would you recommend we go start our journey as an organization if we're trying to figure out if this is worth adopting? We don't necessarily want to put a lot of budget into it. Like where's the starting line for this?
Uh, so r- right now, everyone wants to adopt AI. So,
That's for sure.
So people are trying to find ways and reasons to say that this is an AA problem. I would say I would start with, do I have, uh, okay, here are the 3 or 4 questions that I would ask myself. Is the intelligence capability that is needed for me? Is it a binary classification problem or a n class n multi-class classification problem, or is it, or the intelligence capability that I'm expecting is on the lens of, say, that requires a GPT? Why I'm saying this question? I know a lot of people are throwing large language models for what could be solved with simple XGBoost decision tree based models. So
Mm.
ask your question whether the problem that's in your hand truly warrants a large language model. Second question that I would ask, because I have also seen memes around this, that hey, this problem is solvable with just simple XGBoost or light GPM. No, but let's use GPT for this. So think about that, whether do you have a problem that warrants a large language model. Second thing that I would ask myself is, most of these large language models are going to be both compute heavy and say latency sensitive. See, most of these applications that you see on the internet are kind of chat based. Wouldn't you agree that you ask a question and then a stream of input comes in, or a wall of text appears after a few seconds?
Yeah,
So is your application, is your business case, can it tolerate that latency? For example, if the time to first token or the time to entire generation, if it takes 8 seconds, is that okay? Or else you have to force your application to be, chat friendly or conversational. You don't have to force your user experience to be to follow the modality of conversation. Really think whether that's needed or not. And then last question that I would ask is cost minus return on investment. You will have to pay for either, using this uh, off the shelf models where you're probably charged per token, or you will have to deploy these models on your data center, whether on whether your in-house data center, or a data center of choice, or you use cloud. Then you'll have to pay for Azure or AWS. So these are the 3 questions that I would ask. And if the question is yes, then I would start with building a POC using off the shelf models. And if that POC is successful, then I would consider optimizing it further. I think your question was, where do I start? I would start
mhm,
with asking these 3 questions. And if there is a clear answer, yes, this is an LLM problem, this is not an XGBoost problem, this is, I'm not force fitting it to a conversational template. uh, there is a natural conversational need here. And then my application can is tolerant to that latency delay of 5 to 8 seconds,
sure.
because the time it takes for streaming those tokens is definitely going to be several seconds, uh, at least in the P90. So if you are okay with all this, then build a proof of concept, and if that takes off, then think about optimizing it further.
Fantastic. Well, Raghavan, it's been a pleasure to talk through this with you, to hear some of your story, to get your insight on some of these tools and the direction we can go with them. It makes me want to just stay up all night hacking away at something again. It's one of those things that gets you excited when you see all the possibilities that come together. So I appreciate you taking the time to stop by and help us launch the podcast. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for taking the time to. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to what Torvalds is building. So,
Well, wasn't that a fantastic discussion? It was really great to get to know Raghavan and get to hear what he's been up to, what he's been building. The AI space is so widespread. There's so many different tiny little specialties that sort of fall into this umbrella that it's impossible to keep up with. And I think that's going to be the value of the DevBot tea, is that we come here together and we spill a little tea on what we've been up to, and we kind of dive into those little nooks that we don't usually get to see deep into. when we're at the more surface level. So I'm looking forward to that with future interviews as well, just to see what's going on in different spaces. If you're somebody who's playing in the AI space and you have some stuff you'd like to talk about, hit me up. My stuff is in the socials down below in the descriptions there. I'd love to hear from you. I want to find more people who want to share what they're up to and bring them on here to share about it. So make sure you like the video, click subscribe so you follow along to catch future episodes. And if this is really your thing, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's start a discussion, because I think that's where the real magic happens, is that we're able to open up and tell everybody what's going on in our world and hear what's going on in theirs. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, getting to know all of you through this process. I'm going to sign off today with the Torvalds motto, which is to be legendary. So go be legendary this week, and we'll see you next time.